Between the Lancer and the Desperado won the most votes in our community posts as to what to review first, so you could definitely look forward to this review next time. However, we got an incredible blaster to go through, so without further ado, let's get into it. Dual action blasters are very exotic. In fact, statistically speaking, there have only been roughly about 4 or 5 major releases. In 2012, we had the Nerf Dart Tag Series Snapfire 8, which consisted of an adjustable power range by way of this little knob here under the grip, an average between 50 and 65 FPS. In 2017, we saw the first Smart AR Nerf Alien Menace Voidcaster. You could say that this blaster suffered from the same side effect of all Smart AR blasters of its time. Although it is the hardest hitting in my collection so far. It did about 75 FPS on the first barrel and then decreased to about 69, 70, and then 60, and then 55. Typical for a Smart AR. However, it was cool to see a blaster finally hit over 70 that consisted of this kind of mechanism. Later in 2019, as the Nerf Zombie Strike genre gained a little bit more momentum and popularity, they decided to adapt this technology to the nail biter, which I personally like a lot. Mine hits very, very weak. I don't know why, but it can't get out of the 40s when it comes to FPS. It might be a weak and tired plunger tube. I do have another model to compare with later, but anyway, there was one other company that did try to partake in this kind of system, and that was Busby with the Adventure Force Trigger Fire. This came out in summer of 2021, early 2022. I wasn't able to really test this blaster. As you can see, it's still in the box and it still has the clearance price tag on it. At this point, 2 companies remain to yet implement this kind of firing technology to any of their blasters, and it was only a matter of time before Dart Zone did it. Ladies and gentlemen, this summer they have delivered. This is a first timer for Dart Zone as a company. Guys, I present to you the Adventure Force Desperado. Don't forget, we got a giveaway going on. The lovely folks over at Dart Zone HQ were nice enough to sponsor a giveaway. As soon as we hit 8,000 subscribers, we're gonna be giving away 5 Pro blasters. Details for that are in our Maxim video that we put out a couple of days ago. Make sure to check out that. That is also an amazing Max Pro level blaster that you guys are gonna wanna get your hands on. So the Desperado, I knew what I was getting into when I picked this blaster up. It is labeled as intended for ages 8+. Now, one inherent quality of these blasters is they're always going to be a lower initial FPS than something like a pump action Springer, where the mechanisms of pumping and pulling trigger are separate. And that is because you have to be able to do all of this with one hand. And when targeted at a demographic of young children, this is going to be very dependent from child to child, but an average analysis would suggest that a moderate type of spring mechanism would be chosen for something like this. And this is why they advertise a 60 FPS on the box, so you don't get into something like this expecting huge loads of power and speed. Obviously, this is a modder's dream because it all comes down to your forearm strength and how much you're willing to endure as far as fatigue or attrition when having to do this all day. And we're gonna get into that a little bit more during the unboxing and the performance tests. But for now, let's not waste any time. We're gonna get this baby out of the package, go through all the features and what it comes with, analyze the basic functions and the mechanisms, then we're gonna get to the range and shoot it a little bit, and then I'm gonna give my lasting impressions. Let's get into it. All right, guys, you got your basic Adventure Force packaging depicting the product right up front and center. Got your included 12 darts, fairly visible right here, the way that the blaster works and the functions right here, and then a full comprehensive view of the blaster on the backside. Let's get it out of the packaging and check it out. All right, guys, at a first feel, the blaster feels really good in the hand. It almost reminds me of one of those staple guns where you have the full lever instead of just a designated trigger, and then you just squeeze. I don't want to dry fire it right now, but basically you squeeze and then then a spring loads the staple, and then boom, it fires the staple off. Elongated, very streamlined iron sights. We have the rear right here with a notch down the middle, and then the front is this very nice longer blade on top of the muzzle right here. Very nice design. Some sort of a jet engine turbine design right here. Got the Adventure Force all in this nice carbon color that contrasts very nicely on the red. Trigger area is orange, and then this entire front end is orange along with the cylinder. Looks like we have the same collapsing dart door that we did have on the Pyroraptor. It was originally on the Pyroraptor because they didn't want you running half darts out of it. So it'll be interesting to explore what opportunities we have with half-length dart usage on this blaster at some point. Loading is ambidextrous, which I really like. And there's this little groove here on either side of this front end piece where you could just push your darts all the way in, and you can manually rotate the cylinder in order to load them. Reminds me of how the loading used to go with their Blitzfire series. It's very similar. Now the dart door does spin in either direction too, so it doesn't have a guide switch on there. You are able to load either side in either rotation direction, and then you obviously want to push your darts in a good bit just to make sure that they're sealed against that tube. There are some design choices here that I do have to highlight because they're so brilliant. For example, the way that the body flares in this little area here into the cylinder, you see the matching lines on this build, so it doesn't feel like the cylinder section and the body section of the blaster is out of place. It actually feels like it flows together. I really like that. I really like how right here on the grip area, even though it's one piece with the body, it does flare out a little bit here, underlining the Desperado nomenclature of the blaster. Just little things that normally people don't pay attention to, but overall they add it to the complete look of the blaster, and I really like it. Well, I don't know about you guys, but I can't wait to see what this baby can do. So let's take it out to the range and get some shooting going. So I feel like the dart gate doesn't really do a blaster like this any favors. Maybe if you have a controlled Nerf environment where, for example, you want your players only shooting full-length darts, and those are the rules that are set and you don't want anybody cheating, maybe keeping the dart gate on there in that very particular scenario might be beneficial. But otherwise, if you just want a blaster that you could eventually have some decent performance with and run any kind of dart you want, I highly recommend you remove the dart gate. This is just a little flap that not only prevents you from using half-length darts, but it actually puts some drag on the full-length dart while it's flying out of the barrel. So this little thing rides on a certain degree of tension on the dart that you're firing all the time. That's going to result in a lower FPS regardless of the kind of dart we're using. So we're going to remove it, and then we're going to retest our shots with the full lengths, and then now that we're able to, we're going to fire some half lengths just to see what kind of changes in performance we get from just doing that. For now, let's see if removing the dart gate got us any kind of performance boost. Let's get into it, guys. This is hitting some elevated FPS levels for being a dual action blaster. You guys have to remember, 8-year-olds have to be able to depress this trigger mechanism, which spins the barrel, primes the spring, and fires. I felt the air of that right over here. Wow, that seal is good. Obviously, common practice, don't dry fire. This is just for demonstration purposes. One of the things I do like, and this is common of a lot of Nerf blasters, these barrels are actually tapered, meaning they start wide, very loose fitting up front here, and I was able to tell even more apparently when I was doing the half dart loading, and it doesn't get tight all the way up to when the dart is that much inside the blaster. That means you only have literally this much air seal on the dart. So that means that this blaster is a prime candidate for brass barreling. You could probably insert a brass barrel all the way up to just before it touches this area for clearance, all the way up to at least there on this blaster, and you can still run the full lengths or the half lengths. Another thing that I like, and this is adding to the point I was making earlier about it being a light enough spring for kids to utilize the blaster, the good thing is that we can only go up from here. Teenagers and us adults have more strength in our hands, so that means our spring upgrade potential just went up from there. So spring upgrade for this kind of blaster ultimately comes down to your tolerance levels, how much fatigue are you willing to endure with the added tension that the trigger will now have, running this blaster as a primary or secondary, in single or dual wield throughout the day. All those factors start to come into question and will ultimately help you decide which level of spring upgrade you're gonna want. I like that customization flexibility because I'm totally invested in this blaster. I do plan on doing a follow-up review. Let's do a little bit of accuracy testing, and then I'm gonna give my final thoughts. Let's get into it, guys. So we gained a couple of FPS by removing the dart gate, nothing crazy, but it was enough to free up the drag on the darts a little bit. And of course, with the half darts, we got a little bit of a higher average because it's less weight behind the projectile. Like I mentioned during the unboxing, those tapered barrels are gonna be prime real estate for installing a nice, maybe even a 3.5-inch section of brass for each and every barrel. And that's gonna optimize your pressure differential so that when you finally do get to the spring upgrade, you don't have to go so aggressive where it actually starts to be counterproductive to your fatigue and attrition rate during gameplay. The good thing about this blaster compared to the other ones that I presented to you earlier during the introduction of this video, not only does it have the same kind of power across all 6 barrels, so you have the capacity and the consistency, that versus Nerf being a company that makes inherently weaker powered blasters, and a Smart AR, for example, which has diminishing returns on every consecutive shot, is already a winning factor on this versus the competition. These guys just don't stop winning. They keep making incredible blasters, whether it's the 8+ line or the Pro line. Like I said in a previous video, when nothing's broke, you just don't have to fix it. But it'd be definitely cool to see some kind of Desperado in the Dart Zone Covert Ops edition with the nitro shot darts. That'll be really, really cool. I was already excited that Dart Zone made one of these things because Dart Zone horsepower for their spring-powered blasters is on average higher than most competing non-pro blasters. So I knew that I was gonna get into some exciting, at the very minimum, modability with this blaster. And that's exactly what we got. We got a baseline of a nice 70 to 75 FPS, which is crazy for dual action. Half dart capability with only removing that little dart gate that you guys saw. Is basically just take the shell off, remove that, and put the shell back on. And in a future video, I am gonna go a little bit more in depth on the internals and what kind of spring combinations we can go with. I might even do different tier level spring upgrades by ages, something that teens would be comfortable with, somebody in their early 20s, somebody that's extra fit or extra conditioned for all day events, powering something like this. That's something that's gonna make this follow-up video a little bit more intriguing and interesting versus any other blaster, which consists of prime and trigger, because this is all encompassing into just one motion, which makes this technology so unique and desirable. I personally can't find any drawbacks to the blaster out of the box. I can imagine even children probably 6 and older being able to pull this with no problems at all. And that's gonna increase the range of people that can actually service and operate this blaster on a multitude type of games. If you want HVZ, you could leave it alone. If you want elevated FPS HVZ, or you wanna play some kind of super stock PvP, spring and barrels. The main attractive factor of this system is that the modability potential just seems infinite. And that's something I'm personally very excited about. And that's just on the internals and performance mods. I can't wait to see what the 3D community is gonna do with this thing. Paper skeletons, I'm looking at you. Very aggressive entry-level pricing for this thing. It's $888, United States dollars and 88 cents. They should start popping up at your local Walmart between now and the end of August. Might want to go and check it out. I highly recommend it. I want you guys to tell me what your first impressions are, what you think about the blaster, short-term, mid-term, long-term, what your modding plans are. If you're a casual player, how do you like using this blaster best? Do you like it as a sidearm? Do you like it as a last-ditch effort blaster? Do you want to dual wield these like I've heard a lot of you guys talking about? Either way, leave your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear what you guys have to say. If you like this video, you're definitely gonna like this one. I'll catch you on the next one. Stay blasting, foam fam.